No, Robita, I'm there. Just ask her, message her that link once again, no? Sangeeta, login பண்ணிட்டீங்களா? Okay, ma, okay, fine. Hmm. Oh, no problem. Normal போயிடலாம். Yeah. I have admitted, Robita. I have admitted everybody. Yes. Yeah. Ask to join. If she clicks, I'll be admitting her. Ma'am is joined. I've admitted her. Yeah, yeah. She's here, Robita. Robita, I can't talk. So you just like continue with the talking, no? No. Yeah. Okay, okay, ma. Yes, Robita, I'm able to see the screen.
pharmaceutical drugs manufacturing and medical devices manufacturing has actually caught the attention of the government of India. See, if you really again look at both the segments, pharmaceutical drugs as an industry has reached a certain level of maturity, or I would say a better maturity level, because now pharmaceutical sector has been catering to the global markets requirements for many years. On the other hand, if you look at a domain like medical devices, which is also a critical supply chain to the healthcare services times where the global travel has come to a it was stalled, and then the really choked as prices or the products like PPEs, okay, which are intended, the PPEs which are intended for medical use, whether it is by the healthcare workers or it is by as a protective measure by the masses, everybody. A very basic product like a PPE was in a great short supply was not available across the globe. Even in India as a country, we started getting choked because of the short supplies, and many such scenarios and episodes made the government of India realize that the country should focus on strengthening our Make in India initiatives. So for Atmanirbhar Bharat, the foundation and the requirement of an Atmanirbhar Bharat is a more intense focus on Make in India. This is a sector, a domain which comes under a regulated business category. See, businesses, industries, there are many industries which are not regulated. I mean, many sectors which are not regulated. But of late, in the last few years, all the emerging sectors and emerging businesses, everything is under a regulated category. What is a regulation? A regulation, when we say industry is regulated, business is regulated, what does it mean? It means that the businesses, the way of doing a business has a particular format which is defined and monitored and supervised and controlled by a regulatory body. This is needed to improve the confidence of all the stakeholders in the marketplace. That is the objective. That is the objective of bringing businesses under regulation, because otherwise self-regulation, when nobody is monitoring, nobody is watching, nobody is supervising, there are some businesses and sectors which are not regulated at all. Okay, so slowly, gradually, businesses are brought under regulation, especially in India. Some of those emerging sectors that I was talking about, if you really look at all these emerging sectors, almost from each and every sector is brought under regulation. Regulation will actually, regulators step in, regulations happen in a marketplace normally when there is a derailment. to a defined way of doing. See, there is a way of doing business, and when there is a derailment or when the marketplace is not happy, the ecosystem is not confident, and ultimately the consumers who actually consume all these products and services, when they are not happy, when they are demanding for better controls, that is when a regulatory framework gets defined, and that is when the regulators step in. So today's our session is about the regulatory affairs and the quality assurance in the medical devices industry. I will just run you through a very short presentation. I don't want to focus more on the presentation, but I just wanted to tell you what is going to be the effect and outcome on of the regulation in the Indian medical device industry space.
Okay, ma'am. So,
yeah.
Yes, I'll share the screen, ma'am.
Yeah, please. Can you please share the screen? Thank you. And please feel free to maybe post your questions in the chat box maybe later after the session. If I have the time, I will take a few questions also.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. So I'll just make a very brief, I'll just run you through what is this regulation that has come into picture. Then you do have subsequent sessions where we have many esteemed speakers who will be touching upon all these things in detail. Go to the next slide, Robita. I'm sorry, Sangeeta. Next slide, please. Yeah, when we're talking about, as I said, the Indian medical device industry, I will be discussing about the regulatory scenario in India in the medical devices space. I will not touch about the global regulatory scenario because the global regulations vary from country to country. We call it as importing countries regulations. So whichever country where a manufacturer is going to export, the respective importing countries regulations differ. So the global regulatory framework is again a more broader framework. So I'm talking about the national regulation, the regulatory framework that is defined in our country. So anybody manufacturing in our country or anybody who's going to import these medical devices products into our country, they have to abide by the regulatory framework. This is the law of the land. So everybody has to respect and the law of our land. And then I will just run you through what is the framework that is defined for the Indian market. Whenever we talk about regulation, so there is always there will be a specific act under which the regulation is covered, and there will be some rules, there will be some guidelines. That is how regulated sectors in the country or imported into the country are regulated under this act called Drugs and Cosmetics Act. This is as old as 1940. And then every act will be followed by rules. So the rules that are applicable for medical devices are introduced in the country for the first time. So medical devices rules are introduced for the first time with a very specific framework. These rules are called Medical Devices Rules 2017. These are published in 2017. So these rules have become, they have come into force. They are effective. They are already in place from 1st of January 2018. Subsequently, these rules have undergone an amendment. What happens is in a very dynamic and vibrant regulatory framework, and especially something as as new as medical devices, there will be frequent changes and announcements, notifications, changes to the rules that may happen. So, after the introduction in 2017.
Hello.
Sorry,
Good
yeah.
morning, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
No, nothing. Yeah. So the new rules that have come into place from 2018, the same rules have undergone a change in 2020 also. So there is a new definition medical devices, there was a definition, and there's a new definition which was introduced for the medical devices. The definition itself has undergone a change actually. So this was introduced in February 2020. So as per this, all devices, including an instrument, an apparatus, an appliance, an implant, or a raw material, or any other article, whether used as a standalone or in a combination in the manufacturing, including a software or an accessory. Sorry, No, next slide. Yeah. Intended by the manufacturer to be used either on human beings or on animals. So this is the definition given for medical devices. So it is primarily intended to be used on human bodies or animals by any pharmacological or immunological or metabolic means. It may assist in the intended function. So this is the definition. By what it means is
HOD is calling her.
Everything is covered under a medical device. It's not just your finished good, it is even your raw materials. Okay, so the supply chain is also covered under this, including the software, which is embedded in a hardware. That is also covered under the regulation. Next slide, please.
Robita, next slide. Robita, next slide.
Sangeeta.
Just press enter, no?
Yeah. So what and all it covers? The diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, alleviation of any disease. The diagnosis, monitoring, treatment, alleviation or assistance of any injury or disability. Investigation purposes, replacement or modification or support of the anatomy or physiological process, supporting and sustaining life, disinfection of medical devices, control of consumption, everything, all this, whenever a particular medical device which is used or intended for all these purposes, for the treatment purposes, are classified. This is the definition of a medical device. In simple terms, almost everything is covered. All these processes, everything is covered actually. Earlier, the definition was a little different. Now this is a new definition. So the industry has to follow this definition to understand what is the meaning of a medical device. Most often we get this query from the manufacturers or the distributors also keep asking us the same question. Is this covered? Is this covered? Is this covered? So this is the definition. So it's a very broader definition which really by and large covers everything. Next slide, please.
Sir, our system look next slide.
As I said,
Next slide.
The applicable regulations under this act, the notified medical devices and IVDs are regulated. What is the notified medical device? I will just tell you. From February 2020, in 2020, from 1st of April, there was an announcement that by the government that all medical devices, whichever falls under the definition as I had shown you on the previous slide, all medical devices are brought under regulation in the country now, which was not the scenario earlier. So this announcement was made on from 1st of April. All the medical devices in the country are subject to regulation, right? Now, prior to this, all medical devices classification, very few medical devices were notified. Okay, so only the notified devices were under regulation. That was the scenario. So at the moment, if you currently see how many medical devices are notified, there are just about 37 devices which are notified currently, and only these 37 devices are under regulation. All other medical devices are not under regulation at the moment because the industry is actually going under a transition phase. So when all these things, all these medical devices come under 100% regulation is something which I will show you subsequently. So all medical devices, now another issue is the medical devices are notified as drugs. So there is a Drugs and Cosmetics Act. Drugs are for pharmaceuticals and devices are both are different, two different products. There is an ongoing debate in the industry. There is a demand from the industry that drugs and devices are different, and everybody knows. Even the consumer's understanding of a drug is different, device is different. Users, who are the users of your drugs and devices, are basically the medical professionals and the healthcare workers. Even their understanding of a drug and device are different. But however, our regulatory framework has notified a medical device also as a drug only. Okay. So currently, as I said, 37 medical devices are notified and they are regulated now at the moment. Next slide, please. Generally, how this now the medical devices rules, as I told you, which have come into place, these are classified based on the risk classification. If you look at all this framework, regulatory framework, by and large, this is in alignment with the global regulatory framework. Across the globe, each country's regulation, each region's regulations are different. By and large, our regulatory framework is in alignment with the global regulatory framework. But what happens is, generally, every country, as I said, it has got its own specific requirements. So our regulatory framework has addressed a lot of country-specific requirements. So we just cannot import and follow the global regulatory framework because most of the components may not be regulatory specifications may not be applicable to our country also. So there is a lot of customization that is done based on our country needs. So basically, these are defined based on the risk criteria, and the devices are classified based on that. So anything on a low risk device. A low-risk device is classified as a class A. We have 4 categories in our listing, A, B, C, D, 4 categories of classification of medical devices. Low-risk devices are under a class A. Low to moderate risk, they're classified as class B. Moderate to high-risk devices are classified as class C and class D. This is how the classification is given. Next slide. Yeah. And now, see, there is a classification. There is a framework. Of course, the Act was in place. Now the rules are in place. The rules have come into force. And then the definition was announced, as I said, in the month of February. And then there was a subsequent announcement made that from 1st of April 2020, all medical devices are brought under regulation, not just the notified medical devices, not just the 37, all other medical devices are brought under regulation. Now, when an announcement like this is made anywhere in the world, wherever it is, okay, when an announcement is made, no regulator, no government will come and say that all these things are applicable immediately from tomorrow, from the very next day. No, they don't do that. So they wanted to bring, see, when an industry which was not under regulation at all, when you have about 5,000, 6,000 product categories in the country, even maybe more also, when you do have so many product categories in the country, we have only 37 which are regulated, right? So you need to bring all these thousands and thousands into regulation, and it calls for a huge infrastructure. Regulators also, they need to create a lot of infrastructure in the country. And see, what does the regulator define? Basically, the regulatory framework defines the way of doing business also. Okay, many such specifications are given. If you read the MDR, Medical Devices Rules, you will understand what and all the regulator defines. There are so many chapters and there are so many schedules there. So when you read the document, you will understand that is like our Bhagavad Gita, right? So for the industry, medical devices industry, MDR 17 is the Bhagavad Gita or the Bible. We all have to follow that. So when this announcement was made, they have given a transition time for the industry to slowly, gradually embrace the regulatory framework. The transition time is nothing but the roadmap. So there is a roadmap which is announced by the regulator, saying that in a phased-wise announcement they have come out with. So the medical device rules have come into force from 1st of January 2018. So from 1st of January 2018, they have given a reasonable timelines, very reasonable timelines. I would say almost about 40 months of time frame for the industry to embrace regulations, to adapt, to come under the regulatory environment. So the first phase, the regulator said, first phase is actually for all medical devices, but a technical definition. So they are saying whether it is a manufacturing or import of the devices. So they said 30 months of timeline is given for Class A and Class B devices from the date of announcement for everybody to come under regulation. It is actually 30 months for A and B, which are low risk devices, and 42 months, which is category C and D for high risk devices. Second thing is non-regulated medical devices. See, non-regulated medical devices, as I said, only 37 are regulated as of now. So for the non-regulated medical devices, on Sugam portal. The Sugam portal is an online portal where all the stakeholders of the industry will have to apply for their licenses, registrations. Everything is online now, and that's a digital initiative brought in by the regulator for the ease of doing business to enable the industry to do all those interactions online, and that will improve the turnaround time also. So all those non-regulated medical devices in the Sugam portal who are obtaining voluntary registration. What is a voluntary registration? All your speakers will touch upon all these things in the subsequent sessions. So the government said, the regulators said, having introduced a regulatory framework, having introduced the medical devices rules, all manufacturers and importers and all other stakeholders like distributors, traders and everybody, they are encouraged to come and register voluntarily, just to register their business. Such a simple process. The registration is a simple process. It is a voluntary process, which will actually help the regulator to understand how many businesses are there in the country, who is doing what. So when you register with your regulator, that will also, I'm not talking about licensing here. Licensing is a separate exercise. This is regulation. That will actually give a business identity for the medical device industry player, that the country's regulator has recognized your business, that you are there, and they are actually giving you a business identity also, which is required, demanded in the global markets. Global markets are asking either for a registration, recognition by the regulator in the country of origin, or a licensing. If there is no licensing, at least a registration by a regulator in the country of origin. All these demands were raised in the global market during the pandemic times. So they are saying a voluntary registration. So they will give a registration, they will give you a business identity, they will allocate some number to you. So they are saying up to 18 months from the date of notification. Notification, as I said, all these things have come into force from 1st of January 2018, right? So, and the notification, this medical devices rules are also notified in October 2017. So they are saying from the date of notification that within 18 months voluntary registration. After that period, it is compulsory registration for the 12 months for Class A and B categories, and compulsory registration for Class C and D category for 24 months. So they have given you a substantially larger timeline for the industry to embrace and adapt and to get into this regulatory framework. This is for the non-regulated medical devices. Next slide, please. Next slide, Sangeeta. And there is a second phase also, they have announced it. So registration of Class A and B devices shall be followed by mandatory licensing. So as I told you, the first step is the registration, which is a very simple process, a very simple online application. But licensing is a very elaborate process and extensive process. So licensing is only phase 2. Phase 1 is only a registration. So the registration, after the registration is over in the first phase, the second phase is actually for mandatory licensing. Again, they are saying it has to be done within 12 months after the completion of the voluntary registration. So voluntary registration period, they have given you 18 months. And after that, they are giving you another 12 months to get obtain licensing for your business. So typically, 30 months of timeline is provided. And then if for Class A and Class B devices, if you see after 12 months period, after this 12 months period, that is where this mandatory licensing, nobody can actually do business in the country in the sense like they are not allowed to manufacture, import, sale or distribute Class A and Class B medical devices without licensing. This is what the roadmap says. Next slide, please. There is a third phase to it. So the third phase talks about the Class C and D, which are the high-risk medical devices. So registration of all these devices shall be followed by mandatory licensing. That is within 24 months after 18 months of voluntary registration. Class C and D also, they got 18 months of voluntary registration period from the date of notification. After 18 months, they are giving the industry another 24 months to go for mandatory licensing. After that period, nobody can do business in the country without a license. So regulation, the first step in any regulation generally normally is registration is the first step and the licensing is the second step. And this is the roadmap that CDSU has given. So effectively what will happen is after October 2021, no medical device industry can start play, manufacturer, importer, or a distributor, or trader, whoever it is dealing with the medical devices in the country, they cannot do business without. After October 2021, your licensing regime kick starts in a phased manner. So it's mandatory for all the respective categories in the respective phases. Licensing is a must. What is the requirement of a licensing? Your licensing requirements are very clearly specified in the MDR. MDR 2017, and there is also an amendment of MDR 2020. So there's a sufficient timeline and time frame for the players to actually embrace all these things. See, why do regulators also need these timelines? I will tell you. What does the regulator specify? The regulatory framework mentions about what are the product standards or management system, the standards that the manufacturers or the importers or the distributors, various stakeholders have to follow. So the standards can be national standards or they can be international standards also. So you need to develop product standards. See, if you are talking about 6,000, 7,000 products in the country now, which will be covered under regulation, we need to come out with product standards for all the products. So our national standards body is BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. So creating product standards is a humongous task. Actually, this is where the industry and academia have to collaborate. And both industry and academia can help the regulator to standards bodies, even the standards bodies, to frame the product standards, which are nothing but the technical standards. Okay. And then the regulator also talks about the conformity assessment structure. What is the conformity assessment structure? Is about the certification process, or maybe the certifying the products, certifying the management systems of the businesses, or the testing requirements, or the inspection requirements. All these are defined by the regulator. So for industry, these three are called as the pillars. The regulations, standards, certifications are the three pillars actually of the quality infrastructure of any country. And these are the considered as the three pillars of the quality infrastructure of that particular industry also. So there has to be a right balance, a good alliance amongst all these three organizations to ensure that the industry benefits and the consumers benefit and the various stakeholders of this particular industry also benefit. So just to create this kind of an infrastructure, the BIS has to come out with standards for so many products. It takes time. And the testing infrastructure in the country, you need to have so many product testing laboratories that have to come up. And then you need to talk about the inspection mechanism and then the certification bodies who can actually certify the products or the management systems. It's a humongous task. And very recently, last week, we had another session in Ahmedabad on the medical devices where the CDSU official said They have appointed close to about 700 dedicated PROs, personnel, for the medical device industry. To be the licensing partners and licensing agents, partners or the licensing teams to coordinate with the industry to ensure that the transition happens very smoothly. So they may be handling the inspections, they may be handling a lot of things associated to the regulatory framework. Appointing 700 people is not an easy task also. That is why the transition is required. So the regulatory side, they are trying to ensure that they are ready for the licensing regime when the clock, starts ticking from October 2021. So this is a preparatory phase. So the academia should have this regular sessions in collaboration with the industry, because the students, when they are stepping out today in a regulated environment, every student should know what is the medical device regulation is all about in the country, and what is the framework of medical devices rules. And at least, when you empower the students, they will be ready to meet the industry's specifications and requirements. You cannot afford to have a student today, because it may be outside your curriculum, or it may not be part of your curriculum also. But then these things have got to be taught, and students have to be educated about the Drugs and Cosmetics Act and the medical devices rules, and what are national standards body, what is national standards body, which is BIS, what is the conformity assessment structure. So ongoing basis, they need to have regular sessions, because by the time the transition is out, as I said, from another 10 months from now, the industry will look at even the students who are stepping into the industry also, just to know, because these are the basics. This is the foundation and basic on which many things are built also. So it's important that the faculty should know, the students should know. So as I said, coordination with the industry is required for the academia. Academia engagement has to be kick-started, and then, students should be subject to periodical sessions on an ongoing basis on this. Next session, please. Next slide, please. So that's it about the presentation. So what has happened is, during this COVID, let me just touch upon what has happened is, many startups and young businesses, innovation hubs, so the innovators from the innovation hubs, because I have seen even in SRM, you do have innovation hub and your incubation center and all that. Everybody jumped in to help the communities, to help the government. Every startup jumped in, every innovator jumped in, every established manufacturer has jumped in. So the kind of questions that we were receiving, on a daily basis, the doctors were asking, and hospitals were asking, and innovators were asking, what is the standard? The fundamental questions are asked now. What is the standard? These certificates that we are receiving, are they genuine certificates? We are seeing a lot of ISO 13485 CE marking, US FDA. What is US FDA? What is CE marking? So what are the certificates? What do you mean by a standard? Now, what is regulation? I am a startup. I am a young business. I don't want to be under regulation. I don't want to be regulated. I don't want to come under any of this regulatory thing. So we are not ready for regulation. But we are here with our product. We are going to the market with our product or with our solution. We have come across all these FAQs, and which we actually started explaining to everybody. When a product or a service is ready for intended use by the user can be, as I said, by any healthcare organization in the case of a medical device. They are least bothered whether you are a startup, or whether you are a large enterprise, or whether you are a mid-sized business. A user wants a product to be validated. Only a validated product will be acceptable. So what is validation? That itself has got a different specification. So validation happens when in the process of validating a product, standards have a role to play. Your management system certifications have a role to play. Your product testing has a role to play. And so all this, your business processes have got to be verified and validated. So a user is only looking for all this, so he is least bothered. So even if you are a startup, you're still covered under regulation. If you've got something to do with the medical device industry, even as you're supplying your software, you have to come under regulation, because you are part of the supply chain. A finished good, a product uses all these components, uses all these raw materials, uses all these enablers. So every segment is regulated. So this is a message that we need to communicate, constantly educate, even to the young entrepreneurs and who are in the early stage of getting into this businesses. It is a Herculean task, I'm telling you, because from our association, I also represent a consultants association. I'm the head of the association. We are rolling out monthly educational series on the transition timelines, what needs to be addressed first, what has to be addressed on the roadmap. We are planning to do frequent sessions on the roadmap. We're planning to do regular sessions on the MDR. At least on a monthly basis, we will be taking sessions for 1 or 2 hours for the next 2-3 years, because it is a must. It is required. Even after attending all the sessions, sometimes we are still getting the questions which are very, very basic. And so we will continue in this journey of imparting this knowledge, awareness to the industry. Academia plays a very, very important role, because you are supplying the human resources to the industry. So the industry is looking for multiple skills. So they need multiple skills. They need the students. They're looking at the students to have, even if the students go for IT industry also. Let me tell you, I'm seeing a lot of recruitments that are happening even in the biomedical space and the biotechnology space, where IT companies who are into life sciences and medical devices. There are IT companies who supply technology solutions to a pharmaceutical industry or a medical device industry. So they expect the students also to know all these regulations. So even if they're going to the core manufacturing domain, they should still know. So whether they go to an IT, or whether they go to a manufacturing domain, or whether they go for to a sales and service organization. So sometimes students are even hired as part of the sales teams. Everybody should know, because the industry comes under regulation. So everybody should know about what MDR is about, and what the licensing is about, what his registration is about. Even a sales guy, when he goes to the field, the users will ask, do you have a license? Do you have this? Can you show me your certificate? Can you show me your product certifications and all that? So even he is supposed to know. So everybody should know, because this is an industry requirement. So even when you're changing your curriculum, or when your curriculum undergoes a change, I would request the faculty to impress upon the teams which are working on the curriculum revision, to include all these things also into this, because, or arrange for regular sessions for the students. It is very, very important, and still many in the industry are not aware of this. There are there are many fragments. This is one sector which is highly fragmented, I would say, very fragmented. You have very few manufacturers. We hardly have about 300 manufacturers in the country. And then maybe in the medical devices, maybe another 50, 60 in the IVD space. We hardly have about 400, 500 manufacturers whom I can say that, established manufacturers. There are many who are actually belong to a SME segment, or very belong to a micro businesses segment. It's a very fragmented sector. So when you have to bring this fragmented sector, there is an expectation and estimation that there are maybe about close to about 5,000, 6,000 units or even more, which will come under this segment itself. So you do have now hundreds of startups in the medical devices space also. So the complete the supply chain also has to be covered under this. So the students may work with any of these touch points. They may not choose to work only with the finished good product manufacturer. They may be part of the supply chain also. So it's very important that everybody understands about this, because it is an emerging sector. The government of India has introduced a production-linked incentive scheme. it is called a PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme for the manufacturing industry, where the government is providing a lot of subsidies to give that boost to the industry. So both pharmaceutical drugs and device manufacturers have actually they have come forward to avail the schemes launched by the government of India. Government is launching many such schemes for various sectors to kickstart, to give a boost to the domestic manufacturing. So which will actually focus on meeting our country's requirements. Even in a pharmaceutical drugs, if you see, we are manufacturing drugs in the countries. The raw materials, your ingredients, the APIs have to come from elsewhere. So we have to create a huge raw material manufacturing base in our country. So the journey has just started. So when we become self-reliant economy, we will first meet to our country's requirements without depending so much on the external supplies. And then we will also export the surpluses to the global markets. So when somebody understands our national regulatory framework, which itself is very powerful and very strong, when you go to the global markets regulatory framework, any manufacturer can easily connect because our foundation is there in the Indian regulatory framework. It becomes easy for everybody. Once you understand the national regulatory framework, then you can move on to what is USFTA. That is the regulatory framework of US. You go to European Union, they have got their MDR. So that is their European Union's regulatory framework. You go to UK, they've got the MHRA, which is their regulatory framework. Like that, every country has got its own regulatory framework. Depending upon the countries that you want to export, you need to understand. So when you read those frameworks, you will appreciate and you will understand and you will appreciate the good work done by our Indian regulator. That the extent to which many things, elements, global requirements are also captured. So I would like to stop my session with this, and I request the faculty to get trained first on this regulatory specifications and then to involve the students. And when the faculty is trained better, they find it easy to impart the same to the students. And we as an association, we will not hesitate to bring the industry participation wherever it is required. We will seek the help of the industry also to come and do a few sessions for the academia. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. And I don't want to go beyond this because it's a huge framework, and I'm sure most of the speakers are going to cover. I find almost very interesting session. The speakers are touching upon the global regulations, also the product regulations and the management systems specifications and everything. So I would like to stop with this, and thank you so much. I guess I have taken an overshot my time also. My apologies for that. So thank you so much. Thanks to SRM for giving me this opportunity. Maybe any questions are there, I'll just take, or maybe later also. No issues.
Bhargavi ma'am, over to you.
Ma'am? Ma'am, this is... Ma'am, this is Bhargavi Haripriya from Biomedical Department.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, I think there is an overlap.
Hello, good morning, ma'am.
Yes, please.
Yeah, ma'am. I'm Parav Tale, calling from City Biotechnology. Yeah, ma'am. Just give me some detail about PLI or any website relating production in industry subsidies related to medical devices.
I will.
Yeah, ma'am. One more thing is there. Actually, the performance evaluation and other CDSCO registration is a very hectic procedure. If we have to produce the PPI or small, just like IP or like disinfectant, the demand of the market is very fast, and registration procedure is required too much time to take a registration and perform all these things. Is there any substitute for that to sell the product in India by passing CDSCO? Why? Because of hectic procedure.
See, that is what, as I said, if you have seen the roadmap, when the industry comes under regulation, they have given a very specific timelines. Beyond the timelines, nothing is allowed. See, regulation, I'll tell you something. That is exactly what I said. What a startup finds as a TDS, a large enterprise may not find it as a TDS, or a mid-sized business may not find it as a TDS, right? So the licensing or the framework, it is not a requirement. All the elements may not be applicable to you. Not everything may not be applicable to you. See, when a business, as I said, what is a regulation? Regulation brings a structured framework. A way of doing business is very clearly defined. This is what is demanded by the stakeholders. This is what is demanded by the users. This is what is demanded by the communities and the consumers. So there is no bypass, right? So everybody has to go by that as per within those timelines and things like that.
Yeah, USFDA is giving directly the registration first and after that site audit. But CDSCO having that much first updation of all document and all these procedure take too much time now.
No, it is the same one. USFDA, CDSCO, same procedure. Same USFDA also wants you to register first.
Yeah, ma'am.
So when you have to register, after registering, see that is what you're talking about a USFDA which had a very mature, high matured structure and framework in the country.
Yeah.
And we are talking about our regulatory framework in the medical devices space, which is kind of it's an amateur platform, which is an evolving and emerging structure.
Yes, ma'am.
But what has taken the other regulators so many years to define, our regulator has actually defined many things. And there is well defined the structure. What is defined is a very high matured structure also. When you go to the global markets, as I said, you will appreciate and understand to what extent to a micro level that the regulator has defined captured the global requirements also. Nothing is tedious, nothing is this thing, the process is the same. Okay. So registration, you need to apply. First step is voluntary registration. See, when you register voluntarily, you'll have a business identity. Then you start understanding the MDR specifications, the licensing requirements, and you see where you fit in, what and all you have to see. So when you're nearing your licensing timeline, as I said, after October 2021, you still have about 10 months time. So you do it. The intention of a regulator is also not to harass the industry. As I said, no regulatory framework is, see, industry or the stakeholders may consider as a harassment. But let me tell you, the end users, the users of this products are demanding for standardization, are demanding for controls, they are demanding for a supervisory framework, they are demanding for many things. So how do you improve the confidence of the ecosystem? The confidence of the ecosystem will be improved only when you meet the specification. The structure is the same, but you may not fit into all those requirements. Whatever is applicable to you only. It is the same structure. Here, what USFDA says, you are also applying here online. Then Class A and Class B, which are low risk components, which the registration your license is issued by your state level authorities. Only high risk devices are under central level authorities.
Madam, we are dealing with immunohistochemistry, antigen, antibody, drug reagents. Whatever we are going for C and D class is actually somewhat time taking. No issue with that. But we have some accessories with that. Some accessories require just like low pressure device and other slides and other components are there. The same components also required registration. In that means we have to list out that accessories also in that registration or what?
Yes, absolutely. That is what in the definition says. A finished code. When you're making a finished code, a component that goes inside it, an accessory that is your supply chain again.
We are using in vitro diagnostic cancer agent actually.
Yes.
Whatever the reagent we are manufacturing, selling to the customer, with that some accessories are required, just like low pressure device or slides or other things.
Yes.
Then these things also we have to register.
Absolutely. That is your supply chain. That is what I'm saying. No, that is the supply chain. They are asking. When the regulator is asking the supply chain to register, as I said, is to understand. See, how will a standardization come? First of all, he should know who is doing what in the country, who is manufacturing what, who is supplying what. So part of your supply chain, that is what they are saying, even your supply chain is also subject to quality management system specification given by the regulator.
Sorry to disturb, one more question, ma'am. Neutral license, neutral license. Some suppliers are asking about neutral license, just like pharma. They don't want to show the manufacturing site address. Then is it applicable to medical device also?
I have not heard about it, to be very honest, because I have. You may have to ask specific regulatory professionals who are going to do your subsequent sessions for you. Because, as I said, regulatory framework, it's too extensive. But I have not heard about it. But they have given a lot of things for contract licensing, contract manufacturing. Everything is covered under.
Or MDRT.
Yes. See, the terminologies may be used are a little different, but contract manufacturing, everything has to be covered under
Please,
that particular
share one.
facility has to be, that particular facility has to be covered under licensing.
Yeah, they cannot, but in MDR, they cannot specify the facility is sterile, non-sterile, or what requirement is there exactly for each and every individual. It's okay, no problem. It's right now in the phase of,
MDR is actually a detailed document. If you honestly ask me, it is a beautifully defined and very clear document. Anything beyond this, as I said, that they have created a huge cell of PROs now. Okay, to answer this 700 PROs is what they have appointed now. Okay, so that they will be answering all these queries of the industry. See, when you register online, the first step of registration is very simple. They're asking very basic questions like, and then once you're registered, it is easy for you to interact with them, chat with them online all the time.
Yes.
Because at the moment, most of you are outside the framework.
Yes.
So when you go inside the framework, they're there to continuously respond to your queries, answer. See, as you go on working on all these things, you will have a lot of FAQs in the process.
Exactly.
Only some of the FAQs only a regulator can clarify.
Yes. But the range of medical devices also too much, man. That's just like pharma and drug, it's somewhat limitation. Bulk drug having particular products like that. Okay, ma'am. Just share one link for PLL if possible.
I will share you what is the PLI scheme also.
Yes.
The PLI scheme, I will send you what I will do. PLI scheme, and I will just send you. It's a beautiful scheme, but the scheme got closed actually. But they may even announce it and they may extend it also. Many manufacturers have taken it, but you please go through that scheme, and they may even extend it also. Government may extend it, or they may open it again for the second time also. I will share the scheme details.
Yeah, ma'am. Thanks. Ma'am. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, madam.
here.
I'm Satish Kumar here.
Yes, please.
Diagnose market from Hyderabad. Actually, you mentioned that class AB devices there is 30 months timeline, but it is already completed, I think, for 30 months.
That is what is from the date of notification, right?
Yeah, so already 30 months is completed. But you told October 2021. That is only for class C and class D devices, not class B.
And that is what it is. That is the ultimate final timeline. That is for next stage.
As of now, we started the registration process with CDSCO.
Yes.
But we want to import the class B ultrasound devices now. The process is under. Okay, we are set to upload the documents, full documents, partially uploaded. Can we import now, and this process will go on simultaneously?
It will. That is what, as I said, the mandatory licensing gets kick-started only from October 2021.
Right.
So till such time, only the this 37 notified bodies alone are under regulatory control.
So actually, this is under regulated, I think, ultrasound device. So can we import parallelly register the device?
No, if it is a regulated device, then you need to meet the regulatory requirement for the 37 devices. If the one which you are planning to import comes under the list of 37, then there is a well-defined regulatory requirement for that, and you need to follow that.
Okay, so that ultrasound device comes under regulatory device or not? We are just confused.
It is there. I think it is there in the regulatory. The last 37 items, it is there.
Okay, so we need to get import license, then only we can import.
Absolutely. The ones 37 products which are already notified are under regulation, so you need to, it's a mandatory licensing fee. Okay. The non-notified devices, you do have timelines. If it is outside this 37, you can then, because your licensing kick starts only from October 30, 2021. Okay. So then you have to follow those specific timelines. At the moment, these are the timelines. And I don't think, I don't know, but maybe if there are any changes to that, only a regulator can announce it. But at the moment, these are the timelines, and industry has to adapt and follow.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah, good morning. Yes, please.
Yeah, I think
I
finally.
wanted to talk about the voluntary registration period. 18 months is from 1st April 2020, the notification date. So 1st October 2021, the voluntary registration will end.
See, it is from the definition 1st of April 2020 is what they said. Their announcement. They said all medical devices are brought into this, but actually the notification, if you see, the MDR has come into force from 1st January 2018.
So, ma'am, the amendment rules were declared on February 11, 2020, and the definition was effective from 1st April 2020.
Yes.
So, 18 months from that is 1st October 2021. Voluntary registration, once it ends in 1st of 2021, the products which are exported, the non-regulated products, it will require a registration number from the customs department as well for exporting purposes.
See, these are the specific things, exam procedures you need to check, because I'm really not familiar with the export-import procedures. Okay, and especially the specifications of the importing countries also. See, as I said, some countries during this pandemic, they have asked for a registration number, especially for all those PPEs which were being exported from the country, because we did not have the regulatory this thing in place. So then our own government said voluntary registration. Whoever wants to export, they have to do a compulsory voluntary registration and then quote that number to the importing countries.
Ma'am, why I ask is voluntary registration number, which will be mandatory to put on the label after giving the number. So the for export purpose, 1st October 2021, Customs Department may stop because the label needs to have a registration number.
Yeah.
So,
that is from 1st of October 2021, many things get into this. As I said, that's when your licensing regime kickstarts actually. So many things, they have given a phase-wise timelines and all. Anything after that timeline is over, you need to meet the specification.
And second question, ma'am, voluntary registration 13485 certificate is required from NEBCB or IAF?
No, actually, for voluntary registration, it is not mandated. So that is what we had a session last week where from the CDSU office, the senior official said voluntary registration ISO 13485 is not required. For your licensing, it is a must. Okay. Now, what did the MDR say? The notified bodies can issue. So notified bodies, see, actually, if you really look at your, this is one query we have asked even the regulator. Your MDR is not defining ISO 13485, please understand. MDR is only asking for a compliance to your Schedule 5 quality management system specification. Your Schedule 5 does not talk about your 13485. Schedule 5 only has given a specification to quality management system. So you need to show compliance to that management system. So, but it did not say that, ISO 13485. So ISO 13485 is your business requirement if your customers are asking for it. So we have asked the regulator to clarify this also. So your ISO 13485 is even not required for your voluntary, and it is not mandatory for your voluntary registration. The official has clarified. It is only for your,
The February 11 amendment rules, medical device amendment rules 2020, it says the list of documents required for registration and one of the documents. And the Sugam portal is also asking for 13485.
It is asking, that is what they said. The official said it's optional, it is not mandatory. He clarified that. I know that Sugam portal is asking. Many people have asked this question to me also. I've asked them to write in the process, under the process, and not ready now. Will be submitted the due course or something like that. But it's not mandatory, is what official has clarified.
Thank you, ma'am, for clarifying.
Thank you.
Any more queries from the participants?
Yeah.
Any queries from the participants?
May I ask one more question? This is Rahul Bajaj again.
Yeah, please.
Ma'am, for the performance evaluation of the IVDs, the current rules which have changed for clinical trials, new drugs and clinical trials rules 2019, the labs which are designated by CDSCO as medical device testing laboratories,
Yeah.
if they do not cover certain IVDs, then it has to be performed in an NABL lab. So the ethical committee approvals and the registration in the CPRI website is mandatory, or it can be waived.
See, that is what I think. They have released guidelines even for this also, no? That you need to register ethical committee guidelines and registering with the CTRI for the clinical trials have to be registered in CTRI. That is a mandatory requirement in the country. There is a notification for this actually, which CDSCO has released it. Please go by that. And if it is outside the specification, then only a regulator has to clarify. Because I have seen some notifications on this.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Because they have listed the laboratories who can do all this testing, evaluation, and all that. Anything outside that, you need to check with them.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, one more thing, ma'am. If we are manufacturing drugs, just like I'm Parag, calling from Patan City, we are manufacturing immunohistochemistry. Sorry, ma'am. I think some issues with
Yeah, please. Yeah.
We are manufacturing the drug, whatever reagent is there. It is categorized as per CDSO, sterile or non-sterile with same keys. We have the facility of sterile, but we are categorized our drug as a non-sterile. Is it possible to register our product as sterile and non-sterile both?
See,
the requirement of customer is not just like okay with non-sterile also.
That is what it is. If they have given a categorization, if they have defined certain things, it has to be as per that. If it is not as per that categorization or definition specification given by them, see this specific queries, you may have to reach out to them only. See anything which is outside this, which is not in within the framework, not in compliance to it, if you have clarifications, better to reach out to them and let them clarify. So the interpretations may be different.
It's depend upon customer need or whatever.
Yeah, that is why, because they are asking the industry for such specifics to go back to the regulator, honestly.
Yeah. Price and manufacturing rates are also not determined by many companies. Companies on label. What is the issue is, as per the MDR, manufacturing rate is compulsory. I think so. But some companies are directly return expiry date and just bypass the price.
At the moment, as I said, if they are not inside the regulatory framework, all these are happening. Once the mandatory regime kickstarts, everything will be subject to scrutiny. Your products which are already notified, they have to follow all the norms. They have no exclusions or no exemptions. The ones which are outside this notified category, they may be, as I said, the way of doing business is not defined. Now, but the regulated regime, everything is defined very clearly by the regulator, so everybody has to follow the spec. If somebody is outside the spec, somebody will report and action will be taken.
Thanks, sir.
Ma'am, there is one questions in the chat box, ma'am, from the Lalit Raj Purohit.
1 minute, let me just see this. Brief on startup guidelines for medical device manufacturing step by step if possible, then provide flow diagram and step by step brief detail. See, there is nothing like startup guidelines for medical devices. As I said very clearly, the medical device startups are also part of the medical device MDR rules, so they have to follow the same registration process, licensing process, and everything. Startups do not have any specific framework or any specific guidelines. They have to follow the same specifications, same framework, and same guidelines, and they have to be inside the part of the MDR. So there is no other different specification. There is no other parallel framework for startups. And this is exactly what I said, because this is some request which we are frequently receiving. We are a startup, we need to be excluded, we cannot do this, we cannot do this. A startup is also an entrepreneurial venture. It is also entrepreneurship. So they are also doing something innovative. Even a design and development is covered. Everything is covered. So there is no exclusion for startups. A medical device, whether it is a hardware or a startup supplying a software to a medical device product, they need to be registered, and they should also be part of the licensing process.
Madam, this is Parag, ma'am, once again.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. Actually, drugs are said by just local language also. Is it any rules or regulation for medical device we can use that local language like Hindi or like that for selling the drug to our domestic market?
Specifically, I have not seen. Honestly, to be very honest, the labeling norms we have to see. As I said, this is a too extensive document. So I really do not know whether there is a provision given for having this displays in the local language or the regional language. I'm really not aware of it, and maybe I'll have to check and get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
If it is not there, these are all the things which we can also recommend and suggest to the regulator if you feel that there is a need for it.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a need for it. I fully agree and appreciate this question, because communication is key and critical at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Thanks, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, there is one more question in the chat room.
Sorry?
There is one more question in the chat room, ma'am.
Yeah, I am just looking at Rahul Bajaj. All implantable devices are regulated from 1st April 2021. Implantable device definition was clarified by CDSCO by a separate notice. Will dye used in angiogram would also be included in the implantable definition? Mr. Bajaj, I saw your query. Now, if you honestly ask me, I would say yes. Because again, the dye used is also part of your supply chain for the finished product and a finished good. So technically speaking, yes, it will be classified as part of your product supply chain. But whether this particular specific is used or not, even I'm not aware. Even if it is not clarified in the definition, we may have to go back to the regulator and seek clarification. These are very specific questions, even I'm not aware.
One more last question, ma'am. Yeah. Whatever we are using ingredient with active substituent, whether it is mandatory to maintain the expiry of active and ingredient both in valid time of manufacturing and expiry date?
Now, you're talking about a drug here or a medical device here?
Whatever the main active ingredient, we are adding some ingredient with that. The ingredient expiry is also same equivalence or just like drug. If the ingredient having expiry less than the manufacturing drug, then it's problematic. We are maintaining both the things side by side. Is this same with medical device, ma'am?
Honestly, I don't know, because as I said, I'm more of a management system professional, QA professional, and not an RA professional. And some of the specifications, maybe yes, some of the experts who can clarify this, who are from a regulatory affairs background. Even some of the specifications, if they are not there, we need to go back to the regulator.
Yes, even the stability, there is no clarification for reagent. Even what is the correlation between accelerated and claimed shelf life as per the RNA situation and all this. It's very problematic to define our shelf life of for medical device.
Yeah, that is exactly why I'm saying that. This is why I said once you are registered voluntarily, you can keep on asking these questions and they will clarify. See, they are also learning in the process.
Yes,
that is what the official was saying last week. And they are also learning in the process, and the industry keeps on asking questions.
Yes. Yes.
And they are also coming out with subsequent notifications.
Yes. A drug clear-cut clarification in ICH guideline or other whatever is there. only WHO pre-qualification is giving some idea about that medical devices or like that. But many manufacturers are confused with all these things. So you have to clarify from CDSC also.
See, what I would suggest is make a list. See, industry, manufacturing industry, they're regularly going and asking CDSO for all these things.
Yes.
So the officials are saying, keep writing to them.
Okay.
They are saying, please keep writing to us. We will respond. We will clarify. See, many of these very niche things, only when you're implementing, when you're executing, you will know that, where you're getting stuck.
Yes.
So then, unless you raise these red flags and bring this to their notice, even some of those questions, even them themselves would not have covered in the framework also.Maybe explicitly they would not have addressed it.
Yes,
And there are a lot of FAQ documents CDSCO has released in the website also.
Yeah.
And we are asking CDSCO, we are also requesting them to come out with an FAQs on the transition period also. On the transition announcements, detailed FAQs which will help the industry.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Um, Ma'am,
Yes,
Question. I'm just. It is very difficult to ascertain about particular equipment lies in which class as per CE. Now that is again the classification for CE marking. It's again it is EU norms, and this is all this specification. These things come under your EU MDR, and there are specific classifications, and that classification what they have given is slightly different. So you need to have, you do have subsequent sessions on CE marking. I have seen some of the speakers will be touching upon all this. CE is that is a regulatory framework requirement, product testing requirement for the European Union. For any market products to have market access to European countries, they need to go by CE requirements. So these are the global regulations. Somebody is addressing that session. There, the product classification, risk classification itself is slightly different.
okay.
I kindly request all the participants, for the further query, yours query, okay, just drop a message to us. We'll convey that message to the ma'am, and ma'am will get back to you since we have another session which is going to start soon. So
You can
please
share your questions to the team, Robita, or somebody. They can actually make all those questions and send it, and then we can even send it to our association, and we can get clarifications. We have. I'm also a representative of the Manufacturers Association for the South India Joint Coordinator. IMED is a very strong association for Indian medical device industry. So please send. IMED is the most vibrant association in the country, and helping all the manufacturers, startups, and everybody. It has got close to about 400 members. So association keeps responding, clarifying all these things. Please send me list of all the questions. Okay, you can all mail me. I'll just go. Shall I share my mail ID here?
yes, ma'am, please, ma'am. Or if not, means I can convey to all the participants.
This is my mail ID, rama@valueadded.in. Please make a note of it. Send me the mail, and I will just compile all the questions. I will also send it to the association, request the association to respond. We will share the responses back with Robita. I think Mr. Vijay Kumar, your question is again on that same. USFDA has clarified very clearly CE marking. As I said, every market regulation is different. Their classification is different. Risk classification is different. Importing countries, regulations are different. So that is what, as I said, if you're planning to export to a particular country, you need to follow what they have defined. By and large, the global regulatory framework is an alignment on many things, but then country-specific regulations are always different.
Over to you, Bhargavi, ma'am.
Thank you, Robita ma'am. Rama ma'am, this is Bhargavi from Biomedical Department. Thanks a lot for agreeing to do this session, ma'am. It was very, very informative. And apart from the 100 and odd people following here, we had a good following in YouTube link also. There are a lot of people listening to this session, and I am sure all the participants will agree with me that it was very informative, and And I totally agree with one point which you have specified, that there should be industry and academic collaboration, and regulatory affairs is definitely a point where we have to focus on. Our new curriculum actually has a subject on regulatory affairs, so we'll definitely get back in touch with you to see, like, how best it is happening. So on behalf of biomedical department, we would like to present a certificate of appreciation to you. Of course, even that is online mode. Robita ma'am, may I request you to share the certificate of appreciation right now? Uh,
Very nice gesture. I appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Robita ma'am is just about to share it, and I think, like, apart from what the participants have already spoken, I think there were, like, definitely more queries. As you have given your email ID, I think you will be bombarded with questions in future.
That's fine. Please do feel free. What I'll do is I will just compile everything.
Okay,
as an
ma'am.
FAQ, and then I will just send it back to you. That's it.
Sure, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. And do we have permission to share your presentation with the participants?
You can do that. Actually, I will share it. I have given it to you.
Yes,
You can
ma'am.
do it. Yes.
We'll do
Yes,
that,
please
ma'am.
go ahead. Oh,
Yes,
sure.
ma'am, we'll do that, ma'am. And thank you, ma'am, for your informations you have shared in here in the today's session. And I heartily extend my thankful to for your, accepting in the, few minutes for as an speakers to inaugurate our functions. Thank you, ma'am, so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Uh, may I request all the participants to fill the feedback form which is shared in the chat window, both in the YouTube, also the feedback form is been given. We'd appreciate your feedback so that, like, we can do more based on this. And the other session will be starting by 11:30, technically speaking. So this is the same Google Meet. You can stay back in this Google Meet, and we can just continue with the next session. The speaker would be joining us in this session. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Like, and
Thank you,
yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Thank you so
so
much,
much.
ma'am.
Pleasure interacting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you,
Thank you,
ma'am.
ma'am. Ma'am, good day, ma'am.
Good day to you all there.